So it's almost July 1st, and now you've matched into residency. First and foremost, huge accomplishment. Big, huge congratulations. And now is when the fun really begins. Now, this is going to be the scariest and most exciting time of your life. And although med school was tough, and congrats on getting through it, you made it through, this is now the real infancy of your career. You are about to start residency in whatever specialty that you're going to be starting in. And usually around the country, at least here in the US, July 1st is well known. That is the start of residency training. All right, so hopefully in this video, what I look to accomplish is to maybe give you a couple of tips to make sure you start residency with your right foot forward. Now, why do I feel like my opinion matters just slightly with this matter? So I'm a board certified internal medicine physician, which means I already completed 3 years of internal medicine residency here in the United States. I then worked as an attending physician for nearly about a year. So at that point I had my own residence, and then I decided to come back into residency. I'm about to begin my 4th year in diagnostic and interventional radiology, and I just matched fellowship in interventional radiology. So that means in total, I've been a resident now for what, 6, maybe 7 years now. So I feel like that gives me just a slight bit of credibility. So with that all being said, enough about me. Let's talk about residency and let's get into some of the tips that I have. All right, so tip number 1, first impressions really matter. At the end of the day, you're dealing with doctors who are constantly dealing with tons of patients, tons of responsibility, and a lot of different tasks in their head. And you'll see shortly, you're also going to start to compartmentalize tasks, responsibilities, and even people. Now, from my experience, what I've seen, as unfortunate as it is, it's very difficult to change the perception that you have in the beginning of residency by the time residency ends. And I know that may sound crazy because residency can be 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, even longer. But at the end of the day, the first impression matters a lot. So what can you do? Always be on time. And remember, I had an attending one time tell me, if you're on time, you're already late. You should be coming to the hospital early so that way you're well prepared, you don't look all frizzled, and you don't look very stressed. So you look more professional. And professionalism is definitely a big thing. Always be respectful, always be honest, and always be professional. And usually it always starts with you being on time. Make sure that your clothes are well pressed. Make sure you look the part so you can feel the part and you can perform the part. And that's other tips that I gained throughout my years of residency. So first impressions are big. Tip number 2, be genuinely interested. And I know it's very difficult. Nobody is interested in all topics of medicine. There's going to naturally be certain subjects, fields, topics that you're going to gravitate towards and others that you're going to like less. But honestly, you have to be genuinely interested because everybody can sense it. And everyone knows that being genuinely interested is going to make you an overall better clinician. It's going to cause better patient care. And overall, you're going to become a more successful resident. Now, I have 2 tips that I use to kind of make me generally interested, because I'm not saying that you have to be so interested that you have to write papers on every single topic, even though you don't like it. But at the end of the day, what I used to do is I used to imagine that very soon, you might be an intern, but very soon you're going to be a senior resident, you're going to be an attending physician, and you may be in the hospital when somebody might come with a certain type of condition, a certain kind of trauma, a certain kind of incident where you are going to be the one to be able to quickly and efficiently diagnose and treat it. So sometimes I used to imagine, okay, let's say I was alone and it was up to me to make these decisions. Would I be able to? Do I know enough about the situation to be able to handle it? Because at the end of the day, very shortly, residency goes by very quickly. Soon it is going to be you that's going to be the very first line when it comes to all these situations. So just imagining yourself in that situation, even when you're an intern, starts to build genuine interest because you want to be able to be prepared. Everybody wants to be a good clinician and a good physician, so you're going to be prepared. So that's going to help you. Secondly, the truth of the matter is, if you don't want to think about you helping out a patient, just remember, exams aren't over. You did just take the USMLEs, you matched into residency, but you're going to take in-service exams during your residency. You're going to take a board exam after residency. So that way, what you can do is you break up these topics as you're on certain rotations. Be genuinely interested so you can understand them, gain a deep understanding, and that's going to pay dividends in the long run. So those are 2 tips that I use to really trick myself into become genuinely interested even in the subjects that I was less interested in. All right, so tip number 3. This one is like a bit of a easier said than done, but essentially you have to remind yourself, sometimes multiple times a day, that residency itself, although you don't feel it when you're in the depth of the moment, It is a finite process. No matter how many years it is, residency will come to an end. So eventually, you're going to reach a point where you're going to be at the end of your residency and beginning your career as an independent physician. During residency, you're going to be working long hours. You're going to be tired. There's going to be times when you might have to take extra call. There may be times when you're going to be staying late and coming in early. And all that stuff eventually takes a toll on you. Instead of being so down upon it, just remind yourself that at the end of the day, no matter how terrible the experience may be at that moment, no matter how tired you are, and no matter how difficult it might feel in that moment, just remember that it's not going to be like this forever. Once you become an attending physician, of course, depending on the specialty, it all depends, but it's never going to be exactly as residency was. Residency is meant to be grueling because you're meant to absorb as much information as you can and kind of be battle trained so that when you are an independent physician, your first job should essentially be easier than your residency. At least that's how I feel, and that's how I experienced it in my residency experience so far. So at the end of the day, remind yourself it's finite. It's going to help you kind of get through the process. All right, like where are we at? Tip number 4. So tip number 4 sort of ties in with tip number 3. Be a team player. Now, being a team player is extremely crucial to being a successful resident. Not only, and I don't just mean being a team player with your colleagues or your attending physicians, but remember with all the staff that's around you, mid-level providers, nurses, ancillary staff, you have something to learn and gain from all of them. Because there's one thing that other people have that you don't. As an intern, as a resident, everyone else has a lot more experience. Use that experience. Be kind to everybody, be respectful, which also ties into some of the tips that I gave earlier. Use that to learn off of the other providers. I'll give you certain examples. Once you become really friendly with the nurses, they can help you if they see that you might be making an error in ordering a certain type of medication. In the operating room, sometimes in interventional radiology, sometimes the techs might help you. You may be doing a procedure or something and the tech may say, hey doc, you think you want a lateral? And you'll be like, yeah. You didn't think about it. You're so focused on so many other tasks. Obviously, you're training. You're a resident physician. So you're in the depth of training. You may not be thinking, but because these other mid-level providers have so much more experience, if they're more willing to share it with you if you are kind, respectful, and willing to be a team player. That also applies to being with your co-residents as well. You know, if someone needs help, you can cover for them. They can pay you back. You have to just be flexible. So at the end of the day, be a good team player to be a good resident. All right, last and final tip number 5. Let's tie it all together. Don't forget the big picture. It's extremely easy to get bogged down in the details. That applies for residency, that applies for studying, that applies for life. Sometimes you need to take a step back and look at the big picture. Look at the grand scheme of things. At the end of the day, we've watched enough movies. Your job is to not present any harm to the patients, save a life, as they say in the movies. That's your job. So at the end of the day, what you're doing is for the patient. So you may be dealing with toxic colleagues, you may be dealing with stressful situations, you may be dealing with impending deadlines, exams, studying. You'll feel like you have no time. But at the end of the day, take a step back, look at the big picture. At the end of the day, if you're doing what's right for your patients are going home healthy, your patients are respecting you, respecting your judgment, your colleagues are respecting you, respecting your judgment. If you personally feel like you are progressing from what you did as an intern to what you're doing now as a more senior level resident, if you feel like all that is happening, take a step back, take a breath, everything else will fall into place. But at the end of the day, just take a step back, take a look at the big picture, and make sure that you're on track. So those are my tips for being successful in residency. Let me know your comments down below. Would love to hear from you. And until next time, more videos coming soon.